So, you've probably heard the stories about getting a U.S. green card, right? The waiting lists, they can go on for years, sometimes even decades. It's a total marathon of paperwork and just waiting.
But what if there was a fast lane, a different path that doesn't hinge on who your boss is or who you're related to, but on a direct investment into the U.S. economy? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
We are talking about the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program. You've probably heard the name thrown around, and honestly, for good reason. It can offer a much more direct route, but, and it's a big but, it comes with a serious price tag.
Okay, so what is it really? Well, the whole program was set up way back in 1990 with one simple goal: get foreign investment into the country. The deal is pretty straightforward. You invest your capital in a U.S. business, you create jobs for American workers, and in return, you get to jump into a much faster line for a green card.
So how much are we talking about here? Well, the first big number you need to know is $800,000. Now that's the minimum investment, but it only applies if the project is in what's called a targeted employment area. You can just think of that as a rural area or a place the government has flagged as really needing an economic boost.
Now, if the project is located pretty much anywhere else, that investment amount jumps up to just over $1 million. So yeah, the price of admission is substantial, to say the least.
But listen, it's not just about writing a big check. There is a huge condition attached to this, and it is absolutely non-negotiable. Every single EB-5 investment has to create at least 10 full-time jobs for U.S. workers. I mean, that's the whole point from the American economy's perspective. Okay, so you've got the money and the job creation requirement. But what really makes this path so much faster than all the others? Let's get into the mechanics of it. What actually gives the EB-5 program its special edge? So what's the secret sauce? It's really a combo of 4 key things. First, you're in the driver's seat. It's called self-petitioning, which means you're not stuck waiting for an employer to sponsor you. Second, it often manages to sidestep those massive country-specific backlogs that can trap other visa applicants for years. Third, you can file different pieces of your application at the same time, which is a huge time saver. And finally, there's a dedicated pot of 10,000 of these visas set aside every single year.
And when you look at it like this, I mean, the difference is just staggering. An employer-sponsored path could have you waiting more than a decade. The EB-5 route? For a lot of people, it's closer to 2 or 3 years. You see, the key thing everything depends on, it shifts. It's not about who you work for anymore, it's about the capital you can bring to the table.
All right, so let's say this is all making sense, and you're thinking about it. You're immediately going to face a really critical choice. How exactly do you want to make your investment? Turns out there are 2 very different ways to approach this.
Okay, so you can either go with a direct investment. This is where you are hands-on, you're actively running the business, and you have to personally hire all 10 of those employees. Or you can invest through what's called a regional center. And this is the path almost everyone takes. It lets your money get pooled with other investors into much bigger projects. And here's the key. It allows for both direct and indirect jobs to be counted, which is a much easier target to hit. It's really designed for the passive investor whose main goal is the green card itself.
Now, it is so easy to get caught up in the speed of it all, but we have to slam on the brakes for a second and talk about the other side of this coin, this opportunity, this speed. It comes with very real risks. You have to go into this with your eyes wide open.
And here it is. This is probably the single most important thing you need to understand. There is no government guarantee on your money. The law actually says your capital must be at risk. And that means, and I want to be crystal clear here, you could lose it all, every penny. There is absolutely no safety net.
And because of that risk, doing your homework, your due diligence on any project isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential. You also have to prove meticulously where every single dollar of your investment came from. And even after all that, getting your first green card isn't the finish line. It's actually a conditional card that's only good for 2 years. To make it permanent, you have to file another petition to prove your money stayed invested and that those 10 jobs were really created.
Think of it this way. Any tiny little gap in your financial paperwork, any unanswered question about where your money originated, that can add months or even years to your timeline. It is one of the biggest reasons that this so-called fast process can grind to a complete halt.
So, if you've heard all the risks and you're still thinking this could be the right move, what does it actually look like to get started? The absolute key here is to take a structured, professional approach from day one.
Look, the most important rule here is simple.
You do not do this alone. You need a team. Step 1 is always an immigration attorney. They'll check your eligibility and help you navigate that whole source of funds nightmare. Step 2, you get a financial advisor to help you vet the actual investment itself. Then, you personally have to review all the project documents, and finally, you get a separate, independent lawyer to review everything before a single dollar changes hands.
Which really brings us all the way back to the main question, doesn't it? The EB-5 program lays out a very clear trade-off. You take on significant financial risk in exchange for one of the quickest and most direct ways to get U.S. residency. So the final question really isn't for me to answer. It's for you. Is that promise of speed truly worth the price of admission?